Thank you for joining. We are going to get started in just a moment, but before we do, I'd like to make sure that everybody can listen in the language of their choice. So if we can go to the next slide. Great, thank you. So we will have language interpretation today in both English and Spanish. And I want to make sure that everybody can hear these instructions in English first and then in Spanish. So to select the language of your choice, click on the globe icon at the bottom of your Zoom screen and select your language. And I'll now pause and let the interpreters say this in Spanish as well.
Thank you. Muy buenas tardes. Se está ofreciendo interpretación simultánea para esta reunión. Para hacer uso del servicio, después de este aviso, verá un icono de interpretación en su barra de controles de Zoom. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, Carlos. And with that, I will hand it over to Sarah Eisen, and we can go to the next slide as well.
Thank you so much, Sarah Jo. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you all so much for joining today's public meeting to discuss California's Comprehensive Climate Action Plan under US EPA's Climate Pollution Reduction Grants Program, or CPRG for short. My name is Sarah Eisant, and I'm the Deputy Secretary for Climate Policy at the California Environmental Protection Agency. The CPRG program, oh yes, I see the hand up. I just want to make sure that interpretation, okay. The CPRG program is helping us to advance lasting climate solutions in California that benefit communities and grow our economy. And we've appreciated the support and guidance from our CPRG partners at the US EPA as we do this work. We are looking forward to hearing all of your input today as we continue to develop the Comprehensive Climate Action Plan, or CCAP. The CCAP will lay out the path for us to achieve California's short and long-term climate targets. The CPRG process, including development of the CCAP, is also helping us to strengthen California's outreach, coordination with partners, and our whole of government approach to tackling climate change. Today's meeting is part of a series of engagements that we have been conducting over the past several months to get public feedback on the CCAP, including in-person workshops and tribal listening sessions across the state. In addition to public meetings, we also launched the California Climate Action Survey, which is an online survey to help us gain a sense of Californians' attitudes to climate change and climate actions that aim to address it. We are immensely grateful for all the feedback received to date on the CCAP through the survey and our in-person engagements, and we look forward to hearing from you all today. We want the CCAP to reflect your input, and we will do our best to incorporate as much of it as we can. Together, we really can create a plan that maximizes emissions reductions and brings lasting benefits to all Californians. Thank you again so much for being here, and I'll now turn it back over to Sarah Jo.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I'm going to go over a little bit of webinar logistics. So maybe can we go to the previous slide? Great, thanks. So just to introduce myself, I'm Sarah Jo Chambellin. I'm the International and Federal Advisor in the Executive Office of the California Air Resources Board. I've been serving as the project manager for the CPRG program for the state, and I'm glad to be here today. So to go over some logistics, this webinar is being recorded and will be posted on our CPRG meetings and workshops page. And we will have 2 hours allotted for our meeting today. We have a good turnout. Dozens of people are here, and you will see in the agenda next that we will have a few presentations to go over, followed by an hour for comments from you all. And we will work to hear from as many commenters as possible. So we ask stakeholders to keep their feedback to no more than 3 minutes each, so we can hear from as many people as possible. If you do not get a chance to speak today, but you would like to give feedback to the discussion questions that we'll pose at the end, you can do so through the docket that will be available on our website. You can do that in writing. That docket will be open until May 1st at 11:59 p.m. And lastly, we invite you all to take the California Climate Action Survey, as Sarah was discussing, which is available in the link here and also on our website. And this will also be open until May 1st. So thanks in advance for your feedback in a variety of ways. Next slide, please. So in terms of the agenda, we will next give a brief poll just to get a sense of who all is in our webinar today. Following this, we'll give a brief overview of the Climate Pollution Reduction Grants Program and the state's work to address climate change that will inform our CPRG efforts. We'll next spend the bulk of the time in discussion with all of you, and we have a handful of discussion questions, and for each, we'll take as many responses as possible. And we'll be using your input today to inform the state's work on the Comprehensive Climate Action Plan, which I'll go over shortly. So with that, we'll go to the next slide and do a brief audience poll to get to know who's in our virtual room today. Great, so everybody should be able to see the poll now. It's just 3 questions, and we'll give you all a little bit of time to work your way through those responses. I can see some coming up already. I'm at the bar. It's still changing a little bit, so I want to give people just maybe 1 more minute. Okay, so let's go ahead and I'll just talk through. I think folks can see these results on their screen and you can scroll through as well. But it looks like we have people from all over the state, lots of people from the LA area, from the Central Valley, from the San Francisco Bay Area, and other parts of Northern California. It's so great to be joined by so many people from across the state. In terms of question number 2, how important is the issue of climate change to you? Not surprisingly, folks who are, willing to spend their evening with us to discuss climate policy, most people, about 83%, think that it is extremely important. So thank you for your concern and your time today. In terms of which sectors you're most interested in discussing, it seems like we have a pretty good mix, with some of the strong sectors being transportation, electric power, and commercial and residential buildings kind of being in the lead, with the rest pretty close behind. So it seems like a lot of interest across a lot of sectors, but those 3 are the strongest. That's great to know. Thank you all so much for that, and I hope it gives us a bit of a sense of who's in the room today. So we'll go ahead and stop the poll, and we can move on to the next slide. Okay, so just to give you all an overview of US EPA's CPRG program. This meeting is being put on because, like many of the other states across the US, or most states across the US, and many metropolitan areas, tribes, and territories, California is participating in the US EPA CPRG program, which is authorized by the Inflation Reduction Act. The CPRG program provides nearly $5 billion in grants to such entities to develop and implement ambitious plans for reducing greenhouse gas emissions and other harmful air pollution. It's a 2-phase program, and it provided $250 million for non-competitive planning grants and approximately $4.6 billion for competitive implementation grants. Let's go to the next slide. So this slide illustrates the 3 plans that are required under the CPRG program over 4 years. The top row the slide illustrates the 3 plans required under CPRG in the top row, and the competitive awards that took place last year in the bottom row. Across the US, all entities participating in CPRG submitted to EPA the first plan, the Priority Climate Action Plan, last spring. Soon after, applications to fund Priority Climate Action Plans were also submitted. And now we are turning our attention to the second plan in the CPRG planning grant phase, the Competitive Climate Action, or the Comprehensive Climate Action Plan. Next slide. This is a snapshot of the general competition under phase 2 of the CPRG program. This shows the 25 selected applications that were promised to fund 30 projects across 30 states. An application from the South Coast Air Quality Management District was awarded $500 million to decarbonize good movements, operations, and reduce harmful pollutions in that air basin, from the ports of LA and Long Beach to the warehouse districts in the Inland Empire. So we're very pleased to see that. Next slide, please. So this slide lists the Comprehensive Climate Action Plan required elements. So California and California metropolitan statistical areas are now working to develop the Comprehensive Climate Action Plan this year. At the state level, we are going to leverage our existing climate planning efforts and progress, and we will include each of the required elements listed on this slide, including continual conversations and coordination with interested groups, an update to our statewide greenhouse gas inventory and greenhouse gas productions. We'll rely on the ambitious greenhouse gas targets from state statute, and we will include measures, strategies to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions across every sector of the economy. We'll conduct several analyses to evaluate the climate actions that we'll include in our CCAP, such as the amount of greenhouse gases reduced or stored, the benefits of climate action, especially to low-income and disadvantaged communities, the authority of the state to implement the climate actions, the synergy with other federal funding sources, and workforce considerations. Next slide, please. There are many partners in California's CPRG work. Like California's overall climate efforts, the development of the CCAP will require statewide multi-agency coordination, including input from the CPRG State Agency Task Force, and their logos are shown here. Next slide, please. Shown here on the left are the 10 metropolitan statistical areas, or MSAs, that have also been offered their own CPRG planning grant. On the right are the tribal nations that fall within the California boundary as well. Such partners have been critical to the state CPRG efforts to date and will continue to be so under the CCAP. Next slide, please. The white boxes here show the public outreach and future touch points to engage in the CCAP development and review. Highlighted are the white boxes showing our workshops to discuss the climate impacts and actions with all of you. Today's virtual webinar follows a handful of webinars, or in-person workshops, across the state, and we're happy to extend this invitation virtually so that more people can join. All of our outreach will help the state select the climate measures and milestones of our CCAP, which will be further analyzed according to this rough timeline. And if you're interested in other points to engage in our process, please check our website and our listserv emails for updates on how you can engage. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to turn and talk a little bit about our existing climate efforts that, along with meetings like this, will help to inform our CCAP. And we'll begin with the scoping plan, which is a critical piece of the state's overall climate policy. So in the picture here on the left, you see the signing of AB 32, which is California's landmark climate bill in 2006, which requires the California Resources Board to create and update the scoping plan every 5 years. The scoping plan is an actionable plan to meet statewide greenhouse gas emission reduction targets, taking into account all relevant laws, directives from the governor, and a robust stakeholder process. Ultimately, each scoping plan is a high-level document spanning all sectors that lays out a comprehensive story of the state's multifaceted climate strategy. After each scoping plan is approved, state agencies review, update, or develop new regulations and programs to align with the scoping plan and its unique authorities. Once regulations and programs are in effect, on the ground, projects can be built. Next slide. So the 2022 scoping plan, which is our latest, charts a path toward carbon neutrality by 2045 and to reducing anthropogenic greenhouse gas emissions 85% below 1990 levels by 2045. This is the first scoping plan to look decades into the future and to grapple with carbon neutrality. It also centers equity throughout. Next slide, please. Achieving carbon neutrality requires using all possible tools to reduce emissions and remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. For AB 32 greenhouse gas emission sources, which we'll walk through next, the scoping plan uses a broad portfolio of existing and emerging fossil fuel alternatives and emissions reductions everywhere possible. For natural and working lands, the scoping plan uses land management across land types, prioritizing ecosystem restoration and the enhancement of ecosystem functions to reduce and store carbon emissions and to bolster ecosystem services. Next slide. So achieving carbon neutrality is California's most ambitious climate goal ever, and it will deliver similarly large benefits. It requires unprecedented action across all sectors, and the 2022 scoping plan shows that by 2045 we will need 30 times as many light, medium, and heavy-duty zero-emission vehicles on the road, 6 times as many electric appliances in homes, 1,700 times as much hydrogen supply, 4 times as much installed wind and solar generation capacity, and action on 2.5 million acres of natural and working lands per year. Achieving these targets will also result in substantial benefits, including a 94% decrease in liquid petroleum demand, a 91% decrease in fossil fuels used in buildings, a 2/3 or 66% decrease in methane emissions from agriculture, and a 10% reduction in wildfire emissions. Not listed here are also the huge health benefits associated with those reductions. Next slide. So as you can see from the pie chart, the largest source of emissions statewide are transportation, industry, and electricity generation. On the right, you can see that that's the left. On the left, you can see that California's climate leadership over the last 2 decades has resulted in a growing economy and continuously dropping emissions at the same time. We need to continue such efforts and find all possible ways to make further reductions with input from residents like you. During our discussion, we'll be asking which climate policies, programs, and projects are working well in your respective communities and where you want to see more action. For the next slide, I'll turn it over to my colleague Isaac Wilkins to walk through some existing efforts in each sector to help set up this discussion. Over to you, Isaac.
Thanks so much, Sarah Jo. My name is Isaac Wilkins. I am the CPRG coordinator here at the Air Resources Board, and to be here with you guys tonight. When we consider both tailpipe and upstream refining, transportation makes up 50% of statewide greenhouse gas emissions. CARB has regulations that bring more zero-emission vehicles options to market, rebates, and incentives to help people and businesses buy them, and a program that displaces gasoline with lower carbon fuels. Different state and local programs help build charging and hydrogen refueling stations as well. Next slide, please. Move on to the next sector, which is industrial policies and programs. Industrial emissions make up 20% of statewide emissions, and they're controlled by the state cap and trade program from greenhouse gases and by air districts for local air pollution. Several incentive programs and federal tax credits under the Inflation Reduction Act exist to help companies invest in zero emission production as well. Next slide, please. And then that brings us to the electricity sector. Electricity makes up 18% of statewide emissions. Several statewide policies have worked to cut emissions from this sector, including the Cap-and-Trade program, the Renewable Portfolio Standard, and several other strategies. The state's goal to reach 100% carbon-free electricity by 2045. Building out wind, solar, large energy storage systems, and grid connectivity are key to this, all while keeping the grid safe and reliable, and electric grids, as we love them, affordable. Next slide, please. Then that brings us to the commercial and residential policies and programs sector. This sector makes up 11% of statewide emissions. These sources are mainly natural gas burned in buildings for heating and cooling. Building codes and incentives for rooftop solar and electric appliances and heating and cooling systems are the current strategies the state is employing to reduce emissions in this sector. Next slide, please. Then that brings us to the agricultural policies and program sectors. This sector makes up 8% of statewide emissions. These sources consist of livestock, crops, and fossil fuel burning farm equipment. Strategies to reduce emissions include regulations and incentive programs at the state and local level to harness methane from livestock, store more carbon in farm soils, and plant and replace polluting machines with clean.
Isaac, I'm sorry to interrupt you. It seems like your audio is breaking up a little bit. I don't know if there's anything you can do on your end. I think the interpreters are having a hard time.
Okay, can you hear me now?
It's pretty garbled.
Okay, good. My apologies. I don't know why I'm having these issues. Is it any better now?
We could try saying a few more words.
Hello?
That's a little better. Yeah, if you're closer, I think it's helpful. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you for that though. Agriculture sector makes up 8% of statewide emissions. These sources consist of livestock, crops, and fossil fuel burning farm equipment. The state has strategies to reduce emissions, which include regulations and incentive programs at the state and local level to harness methane from livestock, store more carbon in farm soils, and plant and replace polluting machines with clean alternatives. Next slide, please. And that brings us to the high global warming potential sources. This sector makes up 6% of statewide emissions and include gases such as refrigerants and fluorinated gases used in specific processes such as electricity infrastructure insulation. Unlike the carbon dioxide that is released from burning fuels, these gases have a very strong global warming effect in the near term. So the state has strategies to reduce them, which include, again, regulations and incentives, including funding to help local grocery stores invest in low GWP cooling systems and refrigerants. Next slide, please. And then that brings us to the most common one, which is recycling and waste policies and programs. At the state and local level, incentives and local food recovery programs exist to help save edible food from going to landfills and avoid it turning into methane gas, a powerful greenhouse gas emission. State-wide landfill methane rules also help curb methane. So this sector makes up the lowest amount, which is 2% of statewide emissions. Next slide, please. And then the last sector would be the natural working land. So this is not included in the statewide AB 32 inventory, but some of the emissions are from wetlands, forests, shrublands, ranches, and much more. These emissions include carbon released from soil and the decay of organic material. California has targets for the number of acres to be treated by land type across the state by 2045, and several funding and training programs exist at the state and local level to help improve the ecological function, climate resiliency, and the ability of these lands to store carbon. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to my colleague Stanley, who will be talking more about some of the investment projects that have been at the state.
Thank you. Thank you, Isaac. Before I start, I just want to make sure that everybody can hear me clearly. Am I coming through, Sarah Jo?
You sound clear. Thanks,
Okay,
Stanley.
very good. Thank you. Next slide, please. We will likely uplift programs in our CCAP that enable local climate projects, and we'd like to hear more from you about which such projects and programs are already working well in your communities. We're going to walk through some examples in the next couple of slides. Across the state, the Cap and Trade program has raised billions of dollars, 11.1 billion of which has been invested into community projects, with over 2/3 of that going to low-income and disadvantaged communities. I'd like to highlight a few projects in different regions across the state. Next slide, please. This is California Climate Investments, a community solar pilot project. We invested and awarded $2 million for rooftop solar and worker training for a project that was sited on the Santa Rosa Band of Cahuilla Indian tribal lands and was designed specifically to serve low-income Californians with zero carbon electricity in that area. Next slide, please. The Clean Cars for All program, and now the newer Driving Clean Assistance program, is also funded through the Cap and Trade proceeds and helps lower-income consumers living in priority populations replace their older, higher-polluting vehicles with newer and cleaner modes of transportation. Participants have the option to purchase or lease a new or used plug-in hybrid electric vehicle, a zero-emission vehicle, or even a zero-emission motorcycle. Some buyers are also eligible for home charger incentives or prepaid charge cards to help Californians meet their unique transportation needs. Next slide, please. The Cesar Chavez Living Schoolyard in East Oakland. This is a wonderful example of cap and trade money turning schoolyards, meaning the typical asphalt, unshaded asphalt yards, into a natural setting with trees, fruit orchards, gardens, pollinator attracting landscapes, and outdoor nature zones and learning classrooms. Shown here is a school that received such a transformation in East Oakland. Next slide, please. Thank you. The affordable housing transit near Riverside. Cap and Trade and the CCI also fund affordable housing, particularly near transit. The project featured here was for 72 affordable housing units in Riverside's Mission Heritage Plaza. The above slides give you some sense of the types of community-based projects that the state has been working on for many years. During the discussion, we look forward to hearing other examples and feedback about what we can do more of and what to try next. Sarah Jo, I'm sending it over to you for the next stage.
Thanks so much, Stanley. If we can go to the next slide. So now I'm pleased to open it up for discussion, and I see we already have two hands. So as we move into our discussion, I want to give a preview of the structure of the Comprehensive Climate Action Plan and how your feedback is likely to be used in the draft from today. So in our CCAP, we will be creating high-level climate measures for each sector and quantifying the emissions reductions of each sector-wide approach. Under each sector, we will have uplift different laws, policies, programs, and projects that will serve as milestones toward such overarching climate measures. Our discussion questions today aim to get your feedback on what's working and what's needed next in California's climate efforts. As a reminder, we will work to hear from as many commenters as possible. So we'll ask stakeholders to keep their comments to about 3 minutes or less so we can hear from as many people as possible. And so if you want to speak, go ahead and follow the instructions here. Raise your hand, use the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen. When staff will call on your name, and we will unmute you, and then you can unmute yourself on your side, and we'll start a timer for you. So I'll turn it over to my colleague, Amanda Mattis, to facilitate the queue.
Thanks, Sarah Jo. Did you want me to read through the discussion questions, or should I call on people who already have their hands raised?
Let's see. Let's call on the people who already have their hands raised, and then we'll start with discussion question 1.
Okay, sounds good. So the first hand that I see is Sheng Su. Sheng, I've unmuted your mic, so you can go ahead and begin. Not sure if they're having technical issues, but I'm not able to hear them.
Yeah, maybe let's come back to them.
Okay. Next up is Evan Edgar. I've unmuted your mic, so you can go ahead and begin.
Well, thank you very much. I'm Evan Edgar. I'm the engineer for the California Compost Coalition and participated with all the scoping plans and the priority climate action plans on the first round of applications. And you guys are doing great work there, and I'm hoping the money will be distributed. But the California Compost Coalition works with the Healthy Soils program with California Department of Food and Ag, and that program is working quite well. CARB, as part of the scoping plan in 2022, brought in natural working lands for the first time. And there's a lot of opportunities for it to be a carbon sink, and it is. And since then, the Climate Smart group has, over at Natural Resources, has targeted amounts for each type of location, whether it be grasslands, wetlands, farm, rangelands, forest sector. But when it comes to healthy soils, that's been a great program, and it's one of the most cost-effective programs. The California Climate Investment puts out an annual report, and it has the cost metrics of what is the biggest bang for the buck. And what it has shown is throughout the Central Valley, using compost on farmlands and rangelands, it is very cost effective, about $50-$60 a ton, and it's sequestering a lot of carbon and it's natural working lands, a lot of co-benefits. We're seeing biodiversity, pollinators, erosion control, water savings across the board. So that is working quite well, and I think that's a great program to continue on. The second program we're working on is on behalf of a lot of the edible food recovery. Edgar Associates works with Abound, and we're in about 10 counties working on edible food recovery. And there's been some grant programs at CowerCycle, and that program is once again highly cost effective. And we promote the use of edible food recovery first before composting to feed hungry people. And I just got back from the field, and it's been a lot of inspiration in the field by what is going on with those grant dollars to feed hungry people. It's been pretty amazing. Plus, these grant dollars have been going over at CowerCycle, has been going to $130 million went out for composting, with using best technologies for cover compost to reduce odors and VOCs, and anaerobic digestion to make renewable natural gas, and then the digestate goes into compost. Those programs have been highly effective to get organics out of the landfill, so we have methane reduction in order to make compost for healthy soil. So all this tied to the circular economy, that we don't need to import fertilizers or put stuff in landfills. We can use our own organic waste to make certified organic compost, in order to make carbon negative fuel with anaerobic digestion. And first, you always feed hungry people. So the cap and trade program is great seed money to get programs going. We commend CARB and CalRecycle to do all the good programs and keep on supporting healthy soils so we have really good food and healthy food. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Evan. It's good to see you again, to hear you again.
Thanks. We'll move on to our next commenter now, Mike Bullock. I've unmuted your mic. You can go ahead and begin.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I'm Mike Bullock. I've been retired about 19 years. I worked for 37 years at Lockheed Martin. I was Senior Staff Systems Engineer. That was my title when I left. And of course, climate change is a systems engineering problem. And I've pretty much dedicated my life to that problem over the last 18 years. I was disappointed that the presentation by Stanley Joe, I'm sorry, Joe, talked about zero by 2045. But we should all understand that we need to stabilize the climate at a livable level. Somebody else is talking. I don't know what the problem is. Okay, it went away. The problem with talking about 2045 is that is the second occurring climate stabilizing year. And of course, the first climate stabilizing year is 2030. And that's what California is working for with SB 32. And the UN is working on that problem. It's all about 2030, all COP 25, 26, 27. If you look at what they're doing, they're focused on 2030. Why is that? Because that's a climate stabilizing requirement. It's a standalone requirement. If we fail to get our reductions low enough in 2030, it will be beyond our control. That's why the Secretary General of the UN has stated we have a code red climate emergency and we are dangerously close to the point of no return. And that point is 2030 if we don't have emissions low enough. Now, California knows that, and so does CARB, but only the part of CARB that does the scoping plan. And the scoping plan 2022 was mentioned, but no one mentioned our need to reduce vehicle miles traveled. You do seem to understand that transportation is by far our biggest problem, but the problem with focusing on electric cars and all those things, we need that ASAP, no doubt about it. But in 2030, most of the cars in California by far are going to be in internal combustion engine cars. And so my city, I live in Oceanside, this is what they have in their draft plan as a mitigation measure, setting pricing for employee parking to provide car parking cash out. That's not easy. I mean, Oceanside is just a typical city. Of course, all their employees have so-called free parking. Very terrible idea. If you read the CARB scoping plan properly, you will understand we need most parking to be priced by 2030. Assigned parking, also parking that's not assigned, road, all kinds of parking. It needs to be priced. And it can be done, but you have to focus on it. You have to talk about it. I mean, 2030 is the most important date, not 2045. If we achieve the 2030 reduction.
Thanks so much, Mike. I'm sorry, but it's been 3 minutes, but I definitely appreciate the emphasis on 2030, and that will be part of our near-term targets. And it sounds like we should elevate that a bit more, as well as parking and VMT. So thank you so much for your comments.
Thank you. Next on my list is Tim Frank. Tim, I've unmuted your mic. You can go ahead and begin.
Yes, thank you very much. So I'm Tim Frank, and I'm representing the Construction Trades Workforce Initiative. I'm a resident of the San Francisco Bay Area. if I were to look at the global picture, looking at the projects under the scoping plan, most of them are of importance to us. The UC Labor Center analyzed the scoping plan and determined that about 60% of the work was fundamentally construction work. So the big question for us is the construction work high road or is it not? And there's a lot of variability. So the majority of the utility scale renewable energy projects across the state are actually being built under project labor agreements and are actually performing pretty well in terms of equity and workforce development, creating good union jobs. But in the DER space, the opposite is true. An awful lot of the work actually is structured so that it's not attempting to create high road jobs, and we would love to see a change to that. Even one of the projects that you highlighted in your presentation here with the rooftop solar, I mean, the rooftop solar generally has been a problematic area for us. There's very low union density there, and largely it's a function of poor policy. When the million solar roof policy was first put in place many years ago, there were no labor standards associated with that work, and that has allowed the development of a rooftop solar industry that is largely non-union and that is not training its employees as well as we do, and that doesn't provide the kind of wage and benefit package that's typically associated with union construction work. We think that there are opportunities to actually improve upon that, and would love to actually work with CARB to sort of highlight programs that are doing a better job of that. We think that there are lots of opportunities to get reform there. One of the things that we would love to collaborate with you on is making sure that we're sending the right signals to CCAs, to RENs, to CPUC, to all these other players that have a role in funding programs that do distributed energy work. And we would love to actually help make it a norm within that sector to try and structure programs so that they actually do have a strong workforce development component that is creating high road jobs that pay prevailing wages consistently and create good union jobs. It can be done if we make this a team effort with CARB and CEC and CPUC and the CCAs and RENs and local cities and counties and the state all working together. We could create a circumstance where the majority of the new green economy jobs are good jobs, and we think that should be a goal that is explicit within the plan. And would love to work with you on making that happen.
Thank you so much for that comment. Next up, we have Luis Flores. Luis, I have unmuted your mic. You can go ahead and begin.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, very good. I agree with Mike Bullock, his concerns, and I agree with Tim Frank. I live in the East Bay, San Francisco Bay Area, Pittsburgh, economically, environmentally a disadvantaged area, Pittsburgh, Antioch. We have 3 power plants, and I'm wondering how can we transition from gas-powered plants to solar wind? And they're talking about a carbon capture plant here that's going to, if it passes a permit process, is going to get billions of dollars of 45Q tax credits. And I'm wondering, we need to focus, why don't we focus on renewable, reduced cost, it's safe, it's effective, versus carbon capture, the cost, it's not safe and it's ineffective. And I'm just wondering if anyone within CARB or your organization there does charts related to, if you spent $1 billion on lowering greenhouse gases, attempting to use carbon capture, do you have a chart that shows if you use $1 billion spent on renewables, such as solar, wind, EVs, which one has the better bang for the buck, so to speak? And again, I have to really highlight all the information that Mike Bullock shared and what Tim Frank did too, because of a just transition. We have a refinery that's going to be closing next year here in Benicia, and there's going to be 400 union jobs lost, and those people should have a just transition into a green economy. And I'm thinking putting solar on roofs would be a great transition, good for everybody. But I think that the government, either federal or state, needs to get involved to make that happen. Thank you very much for the time. Thank you, Tim, and thank you, Mike.
Thank you so much for your comments. I see Sheng's hand up again. I've unmuted you if you'd like to try to speak. Okay, I'm not able to hear. So I think I'm going to go to the next person. Up next, I have Nicola Stielnak. I've unmuted you. You can go ahead and begin.
Hi, thank you so much. Yeah, my name is Nicola. I'm in the Central Valley. Wanted to start off by saying some of the things that we do like in the from the PCAP specifically that I'm assuming are carrying over into the CCAP. Investment in zero emission vehicles and EV infrastructure and decarbonization programs, specifically ones that are focused in and support low-income and disadvantaged communities, especially unincorporated communities. But some major concerns that we have with the plan is one, the inclusion of the dairy digester program that can be really harmful for communities that live near these dairies that are expanding and changing their manure capture methods specifically to work with dairy digesters, which means that the local concerns about water quality, air emissions, and like the smells are getting worse and worse as more of these digesters are included in plans like this. And it's really harmful for the local communities, and we're really opposed to that. Another concern is hydrogen. A lot of the times this is linked to dairy digesters, but also hydrogen tends to consume a huge amount of water that can be used for other purposes in the valley and all across California. Also, we're concerned about like a potential expansion of inland ports. Obviously, the inland port programs that are focused on just electrification of our current infrastructure are great, but there are a lot of concerns about expanding the inland ports throughout the Central Valley and the way that that would negatively impact local communities that live near those ports and a lot of the transit stops. Sorry, switching back again to a positive is mass transit. And again, this kind of ties in with some of the EV infrastructure, but any opportunities to get vehicle miles traveled down by individuals and improve the conditions of mass transit and the local level and on a larger level are great. And yeah, want to uplift some of the concerns about union jobs. A lot of folks are worried, especially with some of the ag land transition away from crop production and into potentially solar farms, making sure that folks know what their opportunities are afterwards is really important. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for those comments. Up next, I have Emily Carter. Emily, I've unmuted you. You can go ahead and begin.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Emily Carter. I'm a program consultant with Frontier Energy, and we're an implementer and regulatory consultant for different RENs or regional energy networks throughout the state. And I just wanted to second what Tim Frank was saying about the importance of workforce development. I work closely with IREN, which is the Inland Empire REN, and it has a fellowship program under its workforce education and training sector. And one of the main issues that we're seeing after the fellows complete the program is that they're having a hard time being hired by the host after. And so I just wanted to really emphasize Tim Frank's point that we should focus on workforce development throughout this, and the RENs definitely do want to improve this. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Up next, I have William Mencia. Sorry if I mispronounced that. William, you can go ahead and begin.
Hi, and you didn't mispronounce it. It's okay. I get that a lot. Yeah, I'm William. I'm in the Sacramento area, and I'm an admin analyst for the city. I focus on a lot of the advanced clean fleet regulations, and you know, I have seen a lot of push towards more electric vehicle adoption, and I think that's been great over the past like year. I've seen just a huge uptake, especially in Northern California, for electric vehicles, and just so many more people getting involved, and more programs out there to support that. So that's something I've really enjoyed seeing more of. But we have had a lot of issues, and I have talked with a lot of people from different cities, different departments, different organizations, drivers, just from all aspects of life. And a lot of people are frustrated with the economic impacts that the legislature and the regulations have on, their jobs, their operations, things like this that can really make a difference in the everyday lives of the workers, the departments, the city's ways of managing what they do. And it's there are a lot of challenges, but we have been trying our best to get as much of it as we can, and I know that most people are really trying their best to be compliant, and I mean, for us, we have been compliant, so it's been a work in progress. And the only other thing I do want to add, it's unrelated to the ACF, but I just wanted to know what the state overall is doing about Executive Order 14225, which would basically deforest all of the Sierra and coastal redwoods from existence, which is a big problem that we're currently facing with all of the issues with the current environmental laws being revoked from the federal government. So I just really want to know, what how we can protect all of these old growth forests, and how we can, especially the redwoods, the sequoia, how we can protect those species, but not just those species, all the species in California.
Thank you for your comment. I'm not sure if any of the panelists wanted to respond to that, or if I should move on to our next commenter.
I'll say quickly, Amanda, thank you. And thank you, William. I don't think any of us here today are familiar with that executive order. If you on the closing slide that we have, we'll show the link again to our written docket. And for you and anybody else that has a comment that you want to put in writing, we welcome that. It's a really helpful way for us to keep track of this conversation as well. It's just one more format. But if you have a particular question, we can forward it to the right person, since I don't think we have the right panelist to answer your question today. Thank you.
Up next, I have Jan Mays. Jan, I've unmuted you. You can go ahead and begin.
Thank you. You certainly mispronounced my first name, but that's all right. My first name is Jan Maas. I am with Sierra Energy Reimagined, the CBO in the Sierra Nevada foothills. We're focusing mostly on home and building decarbonization through energy efficiency and conservation, as well as electrification. And what I wanted to suggest is if you could put more emphasis on programs that link climate resilience to climate change mitigation. I don't know about other regions, but in my region, climate resilience is gaining a lot of popularity at the expense of climate change mitigation, and we don't want that. And one of the main areas to focus on, at least in forest areas like myself, like in my region, is the resilience efforts through forest restoration that creates so much biomass residues that currently are being burned in open piles and could instead be used for biomass facilities, small biomass facilities close to the source, which would generate renewable energy or hydrogen and create jobs as well. So this is, I think, a prime example of using or combining climate resilience efforts with climate mitigation. I feel very strong about this because of the fact that in 2020, the total emissions of wildfires in that year basically negated 16 years of climate greenhouse gas reductions from California climate greenhouse gas reduction policies. That's an incredible number that forest fires in 1 year can negate the efforts that we've all been making in 16 years. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Up next, we have Jessica Alvarez. I've unmuted you and you can go ahead and begin.
Hi, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Jessica Alvarez. I live in Southern California in Los Angeles, and I work as an environmental consultant. So I'm deeply invested in climate change, both professionally and just as a citizen. I guess one of the comments I wanted to bring up related to measures that I think could use a little bit more work, it's related to biking infrastructure. Just as an example, like my husband bikes to work in the streets of Los Angeles, and he has faced several like close calls of like being hit by cars, and safety is definitely a huge issue for being able to bike safely around metropolitan areas like Los Angeles. There's not enough adequate infrastructure for that. So I think like that's a program that I understand is difficult because of the limitations of space, needs to still be invested on, and that in itself will obviously result in a lot of transportation modal shift. But one other thing that I wanted to like also follow up, and it's Edgar's comments earlier about the great work that is being done related to food recovery and composting. And I think that a lot of that should continue to be pushed forward. Those are great programs. One of the things that I think is still lacking, though, is like enough education for regular folks to engage in composting, and for incentives for commercial and even residential buildings to be able to do composting correctly. I'm often horrified seeing the composting piles. They just have like all kinds of things there that should not be composted. And so, those are some of, I feel like some of those gaps that could be filled. And so I just wanted to bring up those 2 points, but thank you for creating this space. And that's all.
Thank you so much for your comment. I think we've reached the end of the raised hands. Oh, I see another hand went up. Nicola, did you want to ask another question?
Yeah, thanks. This one is a question and not a comment. I was curious, what is CARB's or California's plan with like kind of how are they going to use this comprehensive climate action plan? Because obviously the implementation grants have already been awarded. So I'm curious kind of what CARB thinks CARB and other agencies will do with this plan once it's finished. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nicola. It's a good question. So this is kind of in addition to our scoping plan process, which asks pretty similar questions, comprehensively across the economy. How do you work toward overall climate targets? It's a bit unique from some of our other climate efforts in that other states and metropolitan areas are doing the exact same effort at the same time. And so the way that we're seeing the CCAP as unique is that it's been a really unique opportunity for us to collaborate with local governments and to compare notes with other states. So that is something that is very unique about the CCAP. it's also a chance to uplift specific programs and projects. The scoping plan is a pretty high level document, whereas the CCAP, we have the space and the room to get a little bit more granular about projects, which is why we were elevating some of the CCI projects to kind of plant a seed and get input from you all in that way. And there are other considerations that the CCAP asks of us. And so it's a unique opportunity to maybe dig a little bit more with our colleagues at the labor agency, about any workforce considerations. So it was helpful to hear some of those comments earlier. So it's going to be a big, big report, and it's the chance to uplift a lot of things that are working well and that we could be doing more of between the scoping plans. So I hope that helps. But there's no funding attached to it the way there was with the PCAP. I think that's a really good point that you brought up.
We have one question from somebody who hasn't gotten to speak yet, David Velez. I've unmuted you. You can go ahead and begin.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, my name is David Velez. I'm a community composter in Los Angeles, California. And, I see a lot of green bins being out there in commercial, residential. However, like the other participant was saying, there is not a lot of organics in those bins. And I'm just thinking, who would be in charge of implementing, like just having people do it? Because we have this infrastructure and people are not really using it. They just have that empty bin all the time, or just doesn't get picked up. I don't know if there's an opportunity there to improve in that sector, and who would that be? That's one question. And the other one would be like, is there any plans to support more community composting? Because I just saw in that graphic that you presented, there is a big emission problem with transportation, which also comes from a lot of our really big trucks, right, that are picking up the waste. Not only creates disturbance for people in communities, but also it boosts our emissions, especially because the waste is not being processed anywhere near, for example, Los Angeles or other urban areas.
Yeah, those are really good questions. These are questions particularly for, at the state level, our colleagues at CalRecycle. So we can pass those along to them and see how we can address that in the CCAP. I think that there's also perhaps some, and CalRecycle would know this better than I, but perhaps some unique things that can be done at the local level through education or other operations. At the county or city level with some of those, getting more people to compost and zero emission trucks to collect some of that compost material. Thank you for the questions and the comments.
Up next, I see Marty Walters. I've unmuted you. Go ahead and begin.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you so much for this meeting. And I am Marty Walters. I live in Plumas County. I might be the only person who relies on electric cars up here. And I thank you very much for the Inflation Reduction Act charging stations in rural areas. That is fantastic. But the other thing I wanted to kind of comment on for going forward is sort of more of a big picture in terms of thinking about how we're integrating, our sustainability and carbon reduction programs into kind of real life for Californians. And especially, for those of us who have survived massive wildfires and are going through a lot of kind of redevelopment, rebuilding, and having to deal with, the whole resilience aspect of climate change as well. One of the things I just think would be so good is if we could do more integrating of sustainability into, really practical ways of doing resilience. So we have all of these properties now being reclassified into very high severity wildfire zones. and we're going to need to do something with all of these existing houses in, you know, all of these local responsibility areas. And as we are doing that, we can also start to look at those existing houses and existing buildings for energy efficiency and resilience, and, you know, kind of integrate those together, because we need to do it to survive. So that's my comment, and thank you again. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I think that we've reached the end of the raised hands. So Sarah Jo, I don't know if you wanted, oh, I see a few more.
Yeah, that's great. I'm so glad people are raising their hands. All of these comments are super, super helpful. I think if you're thinking about raising your hand and you haven't yet, one of the things that we haven't heard yet is some of or maybe the last commenter started to get at this, but just the personal effects of climate change that are happening. I know it sounds like many of you are pretty informed about what we expect from a IPCC kind of report about the climate impacts, but some things we've heard in our in-person workshops have been around, you know, in places where it gets really hot in the summer, it's getting so hot that their kids can't play outside for months at a time. So any personal impacts of climate change, we're also collecting those. So please keep your comments coming. And if you have anything to share on personal climate impacts, we'd love to hear that too. Back over to you, Amanda.
I see Evan Edgar next. I think you're already unmuted, so you can go ahead and.
Oh, Evan Edgar, on a personal level, since you mentioned it, I was clinically diagnosed by my, not my therapist, but my neurologist, having climate depression. And that's a new thing out there, where a lot of folks, whether it be in the heat, the smoke, the fires, and the lack of progress, because we work so hard as climate professionals and folks to try to make good change and make things happen quicker. And things are getting worse than ever, especially with the federal dollars and what's going on in Washington. So I think there's a lot of folks who have climate depression. And plus, there's a whole group of climate refugees, as I call them, who move out of the valley to go to the coast, you know, whether it be Humboldt or move to Oregon or coast because of the heat down here. So I think there's a big climate refugee pathways going on to get out of the valley during the hot time. So personally, that's what I did. I have an office up in Humboldt now, and I'm doing programs on edible food recovery and community compost and compost facilities up in Humboldt County. And CalRecycle actually got a lot of grant money up there to local government. So CalRecycle is responsible for enforcement of 1383. And the last speaker from LA Community Compost is correct. We're not seeing the public participation that is needed to collect the organics out of the landfill, and there needs to be enforcement. And I'm sure CalRecycle is on it this year, so that needs to be enforced so we get less organics in landfill and more food to hungry people and more food to compost. So over at CalRecycle, they do have one thing they did have on the list was they have a Plan B list. I mean, a project list for the B list, because they did fund 130 programs out of cap and trade and surplus money. And as part of the Climate Priority Action Plan, one of the programs CalRecycle submitted to Cal EPA to have the application package was the B list, which had about $60 million in projects to do more composting and some do more anaerobic digestion to get more stuff out of the landfill. And that's been, like I said, when I submit my comments, and I will look when the comments are due, I want to submit to you back the CARB report on a California Climate Investment Program that goes through all the metrics of what is affordable and what participation of priority populations is pretty large. So you have great metrics for the last 10 years of cap and trade, where the money's been going and how it's being spent and what are the metrics. And with the new affordability of California, with electrical rates going up and gas rates, you know, the garbage rates and all that could be going up. So I think that what people want are affordable programs, and these programs that I've been talking about, from healthy soils to edible food to compost, are one of the most affordable programs to be funded under cap and trade dollars. Thank you.
Next, I have Mike Bullock again. I have unmuted you, I think.
Okay,
oh,
yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I wanted to give CARB more credit for the CARB scoping plan 2022 than what people have heard, and understand that when we work in our communities on climate action plans, they should conform to that CARB scoping plan. That scoping plan is really about stabilizing the climate, which is to say, avoid destabilization, which ends in mass starvation, extinction of our species, extinction of most life on the planet. I guess that ignores microbiology. We're not necessarily going to sterilize the planet, but certainly will be gone, and the suffering is hard to imagine. You take what's happening in Gaza and you extend that to 8 billion people, whatever the population is. Starvation is very unpleasant, and we are destroying our habitat. So SB 32, state law, has 2 climate stabilization requirements. The first one is 2030. That's certainly the most important because it's kind of happening so soon, and it should not ever be ignored. That's where our emphasis should be. The second one is 2045, and that's net zero. 2030, it's 40% below what we emitted in 1990. So how are we going to do that? Well, the CARB scoping plan is not perfect, and it needs a lot more detail, but broadly speaking, it is correct. I think they actually did the math. They don't show the math. I've done the same thing. I presented reports at conferences, so on and so forth. I show all of my math. CARB shows none of their math, but they say we must reduce vehicle miles traveled by 2030 by 25% compared to what we drove in 2018. Now that's very, very large, and that contradicts the other CARB, the evil CARB, the CARB that is about SB 375, and it's telling all the metropolitan planning organizations that they need to reduce their driving 19% by 2035. In other words, 5 years later and 33% less. Well, that's not going to work. That's not going to stabilize the climate. But there is a good CARB, and that's the part of CARB, the people that actually stuck their neck out and did the math and told us the awful truth. It's so awful that most of CARB doesn't want to talk about it. Now, how do you get that 25% reduction? Well, there's 3 things. Pricing is essential. That's clear from the CARB scoping plan. Pricing, this is what people do not want to hear, is essential. And it can be done in a way that's politically acceptable. But yes, it's very, very tricky. And CARB doesn't go there. The CARB scoping plan.
Sorry to interrupt. Just seeing that we've reached the time, I'm going to have to move on to the next person. William, you can go ahead and begin.
Yeah, so I just wanted to add some points to what Marty was talking about the wildfires, and just I started thinking about when you mentioned bringing up some personal notes. I mean, I haven't experienced a wildfire. I've been very lucky with that, but I do know a lot of people that have had that issue, that problem, and they've lost a lot of things over the years. And the thing I've really noticed, especially in the Sacramento area, when it comes to housing, I've seen, it's a very fast growing city. There's housing developments popping everywhere, but they're always being built in the same manner using, little sticks and paper and the same material that is used basically everywhere in the US. And in a state as California, where we're so prone to, fires, and, a lot of our areas maybe not going to be as suitable for a very wet and safer and less fire prone environment in the coming decades. I feel like we need to start thinking about how we start building our communities, especially after these wildfire events like we saw in LA. How do we start building them in a more resilient way rather than just going back to the status quo? I went up to the Paradise Fire after that happened, and now I'm getting all these comments and ads for housing in Paradise that's being rebuilt. And yeah, that's fantastic, but it's being rebuilt in the same areas with the same materials, which is just sticks. And I just feel like there needs to be some sort of legislature or something needs to be done to minimize the risk, not just for people and businesses and cities at large, but also for, you know, the materials and the way we start thinking of how we use and how do we build our communities more resilient for all of these potential wildfire events that could be, happening. They could happen anytime, and we need to know how to adapt our cities to not be more susceptible to the fires. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Up next, Jan. I think I said that correctly this time.
Perfectly pronounced. Thank you so much for giving me another chance. In terms of how we are being impacted by climate, first of all, Evan is right. There is a lot of depression, especially among young people. We had a doctor speaking at a community event about the impact of smoke on young people. And even though that was not the topic of the conversation, we heard that there's increased suicide rates among young people. That's about the worst it gets. But in addition to that, there's more smoke days, there's more hot days. People live with smoke and fire in their heads. It's a daily thing, it's always on people's minds. There's more droughts. People are spending more money on their homes to harden them. People spend more time, which is a good thing, working together on prescribed fire events. One of the beautiful things as a result of climate change here in the foothills is that many people have joined Firewise communities and are working together across political divisions and doing really good work at the local community level. I also want to put in a plug for Firewise communities. Even though they're focused on fire, they could also be a channel, so to speak, to do other things, especially related to energy efficiency of homes. One potential project would be a home hardening project that is part of a FEMA grant and CAL FIRE grant combined to restore forest in an area that is called the Woodpecker Ravine Project in Grass Valley in Nevada County, which provides $16,000 of rebates for people to implement home hardening efforts. And if we could combine that with the HERA and Inflation Reduction Act rebates, to use it at the same time, people could have almost $40,000 to simultaneously improve the walls of their homes or the envelope of their home, both in terms of home hardening as well as in terms of energy efficiency. That would be a very efficient use of federal, hopefully still, and local state funds. So that's something I would really like to see, and maybe to give some more attention to. One last thing, in these rural density areas like the one where I live, we don't have access to energy efficiency programs that already exist and that are supported by the California Energy Efficiency Coordinating Committee, that is a CPUC program that oversees these public purpose funds that are used for energy efficiency. The reason why areas like ours are overlooked is that implementing agencies, the companies that implement these programs, can't make any money coming out so far. And if there's anything that would be a very cost-effective solution to this, is to support local organizations that can aggregate the demand for these energy efficiency programs and be like a last mile implementer or connector, so that the result would be that many more people in low density rural areas like mine would get access to existing efficiency programs. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jan. I feel like there's like a big finish when that music goes off and you're done. Thank you. We don't mean to cut you off. We actually increase the time a bit because we still have a lot of time left, and encourage you all to keep raising your hands. Thank you for that comment. I just wanted to echo that that's a really concrete and specific way to address some of the questions that some of the suggestions that we've heard to integrate resilience and mitigation at the same time. So just wanted to say thanks for that, and that we've increased the time on our timer to 4 minutes. Amanda, back to you.
Thanks, Sarah Jo. I see Nicola again has her hand raised, so I've unmuted you and you can go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Wanted to kind of touch on some of the climate change effects that we're seeing here in the Valley. One of the biggest ones is extreme heat. And it makes it so much harder, especially in the summers, to just kind of live your life on like a daily basis. It's hard to just walk around. It's hard to use public transit because you're waiting at bus stops and it's over 100 degrees out. And the air quality in the Central Valley is already some of the worst in the country. And then anytime that we have like nearby wildfires, even if we're lucky and they don't affect people's homes, you still get the extra air pollution. So existing outside in the Central Valley during the summer is getting more and more difficult. And something I want to bring up that I think we like sometimes touch on in like these kind of carbon mitigation discussions is just increased use of green space. And I know that it's kind of small scale, like when you're comparing it to like electric vehicles and like industrial facilities, but there's so many individual communities that would greatly benefit by increased tree coverage in like, again, near bus stops or bus shelters and things like that, and having local parks and all of these things that increase green space, all the co-benefits of increased green space that would be really helpful for smaller communities and again, unincorporated communities and things like that. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Mike, I've unmuted you and you can go ahead and begin.
Well, thank you again. Yeah, I want to take it just a little farther and give a little more credit to CARB and the scoping plan, which understand that is a plan to survive. We're trying to set an example here in California, and other people can do those mitigation measures. And it does get down to mitigation measures. I don't think I got that far. I got to where we need to reduce driving 25% by 2030 relative to 2018 levels. But how are you actually going to do that? We're very car centric, and CARB understands that. And so they had to think real hard, and they came up with some things which people don't like to hear. But 2030 is so soon that we have to be practical, and the mitigation measures have to make sense. And CARB did that. And they said that we needed to double our transit service by 2030 relative to also 2018. And then they said pricing is essential, but I got to take that a little farther. What kind of pricing am I talking about? I'm talking about how we price the use of car parking and how we price the use of roads. And in both cases, it needs to be value-based. And that's kind of a nice way to say full cost pricing, but it's based on the value of what is being used. It has to be acceptable to the people who are experiencing this new, for instance, car parking system, or this new road use charge, which should actually replace the very regressive gasoline tax. And it needs to be, I said value priced, it needs to be also means-based because a lot of people have to drive. They don't have very much money. And so for low-income people, there should be not only no gas tax, there should be no gas tax for anybody, not a California gas tax. The federal government's not going to help us at all. But we have to replace the California gas tax with a means-based value-priced road use charge, which has the feature of congestion pricing and other features which will really help us. Now, on the parking side of it, I have explained this to people in the private sector. The private sector is much more ready to do large changes, and that is what we have to do. So we have to use the private sector, but CARB can use the private sector just like Lockheed got used by the government. You know, Lockheed is a private company, but the Air Force wanted satellites. Satellites are complicated. Car parking is also very complicated. Keith Jones, as an example, is the CEO of Ace Parking. He's ready to reinvent his company. He is ready to have a system which people like. And basically, you operate parking for the financial gain of the people for whom the parking is built, or the people that are losing money because the parking is there. So I told you it was complicated. it is. But, you know, my reports explain all this, and Keith Jones is a guy that reads the reports. He knows that climate change is real. He knows there's an enormous business opportunity because free parking is just a terrible, terrible system. And good systems can replace bad systems rather quickly. And but the problem is the government is a bit slow in these matters, and CARB in particular. And so I would love to work with CARB and bring Keith Jones in. Of course, we don't give the job to Keith Jones. He has to win that in the RFP process, just like Lockheed and other companies compete fairly. And but CARB can do it for their own employees. You have parking garages, and you're probably charging nothing or next to nothing, and you know, your employees might think that's pretty good, except maybe the ones that don't drive to work every day.
Sorry, being mindful of the time. I'm going to have to move on to the next commenter, but thank you so much for your comments. Up next, I have David. I've unmuted you. You can go ahead and begin.
Yes, hi. So I've seen that after the fires in Los Angeles, like people got scared with maybe like having trees around their house, and even like the convention center took down, like, I know they're invasive trees. They took down like eucalyptus trees, but they took down like maybe 14 to 20 trees. So I can't imagine of the impact that actually creates in our atmosphere. As far as the carbon sequestration or whatnot. And I just feel that there's an overall fear of having trees near property. Maybe there's an opportunity there to educate the public on not doing that. I also feel like now after the fires, it's been pretty hot in Los Angeles. It's an unusual climate we're having lately. And the way it's impacted me, for example, like I worked in this remediation project with zeolites, and there was this one time where we were packing zeolites for the customers and for the community scientists, we call them, in the project. And between the fires and zeolite, I don't know, it created in my body like this, it created it went out of balance, because zeolites are salts, and then it's very acidic, all the ashes that we're breathing. So yeah, I couldn't breathe like for a week. It was really bad. So and I was wearing a mask for most of the time, not all the time. I've got to be honest, right? But it's still like what I experienced that week. It was very unusual. And as far as like other things with and opportunities with like reducing our emissions, I know I'm getting a little bit like into like all this different stuff, but it's something that I need to say, because I've been doing also food rescue for the past 4 years. And I've studied this matter very well. And I don't know, maybe why we don't work on making better prices for the public rather than having to rescue the food and give it for free to people. And after eating so much rescued food for the past years, and analyzing different qualities from different stores, there is a certain what do you call that? Bitter taste. It looks perfect and everything, but there's always that taste of, it's been there longer. It went through different changes in temperature. Like, we're not gonna change that. That happens, but why don't we just lower the prices and have better prices for Californians rather than just having all these emissions, like having the trucks come in and donate it, then having 20 trucks and come and pick up whatever the one truck left at some place. I don't know. It's just, yeah, that's it. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Sorry, Amanda. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, we're actually, I don't see any more hands, so you can go ahead.
Okay, thanks. I just want to say thank you for everybody who shared something personal about climate change that's affecting them or other personal stories that they're saying. I know that that's typically something we ask for, and I just really appreciate that people are willing to share. And I also, seeing that there's no other hands, maybe we can go to the last slide. Great, thank you. I wanted to just make sure that people have some links here, and I want to point you to the second bullet here first. We heard some really, really great feedback today, and some of it, I feel like I'm glad that people got a second chance, or however many chances to speak, because I feel like we really got to fully hear some of these ideas, which are complex. And if you can submit your comments in writing as well, I feel like that's always very helpful for us just to double check our notes and make sure that we've gotten everything correct. So the second bullet here has a link to where you can submit written comments to the discussion questions that were on the previous slide. And whether you spoke or you didn't, really encourage you to do that if you're so inclined. The second thing I wanted to point your attention to is the California Climate Action Survey. There's a link and a QR code here for that. It's short, it's anonymous, and it's a great way for us to just kind of track how folks in California are thinking and feeling about climate and climate options at this point in time. You can always reach out to us on the CPRG team through this email address, ca.cprg@arb.ca.gov. We look forward to hearing from you. And then lastly, here's our website, this last bullet here, our CPRG website, where you can see our deliverables and get links to future opportunities to engage. And that is basically it. Just thank you everybody who came tonight, took time out of your evening. We'll let you all go now, and the recording of this will be up on our website soon. And we look forward to staying in touch with you all as the CPRG process continues. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.